All right, we're live with Command Sergeant Major Jason Willett. Spent 27 years in the Army. Appreciate you coming on. A little background. Where'd you grow up at?
Yeah, so I was actually born in Bristol, Connecticut, but my mom married someone in the Army, so it'd be when I was 7 years old. So at 7 years old, I was off and running, Army brat. Bounced around Germany, Colorado, back to Germany, a few different places, and then I ended up going in the military myself. Just seemed to be the logical choice. Had no desire to go get a real job, so I just said, well, let me hit the easy button and follow in the footsteps of my stepdad. So
absolutely
join the military.
Before we get rolling, I want to do a shout out to my sponsor, Fab CBD. They're a supporter of me. It's a great product. I use it every night. I suffer from PTSD, and it helps me fall asleep a little better. So the link's at www.fabcbd.com, code name STEEL, all caps. You get a discount on the product. It's great. So you joined the military. You leave for MEPS basic. How was that?
Yeah, it was interesting. So my stepfather's last duty station where he retired from was Fort Stewart, Georgia, down in Hinesville, right outside of Savannah. And so they didn't have any MEPS or anything there in that location. So I ended up going down to Jacksonville, Florida, did the MEPS down there, and pretty much shipped out from down there. Ended up doing my basic and training and AIT at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. At which point, I did that. And then, first duty station was the beautiful Fort Polk, Louisiana, or, what we all cherished and called it back then, Fort Puke, Louisiana. But, it was actually good and bad, for the fact that it was my first time away from home. So there wasn't a whole lot around to get into, which was good, but then it was bad though, because I got into a whole lot of stuff because there wasn't a whole lot to get into. So I arrived there. It's kind of crazy. The way I met my first sergeant was back then they had like a reception, so you didn't go right to your unit. You get to the installation, and they had like a reception area, a company that you were a part of.
Yeah.
So I got there. I won't go into details, but I got arrested. 17 years old, just got to Louisiana. I was there for 3 days, got arrested, and met my first sergeant. He picked me up basically in the drunk tank. That's how I met my first sergeant. Needless to say, got a little bit of UCMJ and was the designated grass mower for 6 months.
Good times.
It was awesome. But it was a lesson learned. But I definitely didn't want to do that again. It was a different Army back then too. So I mean, they just pretty worked the crap out of me, and didn't put it in my records or anything like that. So it didn't really hinder my future career. Where obviously I couldn't put on my mosquito wings. I couldn't make private for a while, but you eventually catch up.
Yeah.
So I went in as a unit supply specialist. So I was in logistics when I went in, and there wasn't really no specific reason why I chose that. It was just kind of when I went to the MEPS, and this kind of what lined up based what my timeline was and what I was interested in doing. It's quite interesting first duty station there at Fort Polk. At the time, it was me, another private, and we had an E6 that was our boss. And I don't know, things just happened kind of weird where, he got into some trouble. The staff sergeant did. And like a year in when I was there, he got booted out of the military. And we were sport final to go to a deployment to Saudi Arabia. And so they didn't have enough time to bring anybody on. So they anointed me E3 Jason Willett, PFC Jason Willett, as the lead supply guy for the deployment for everything. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. So, I had all those responsibilities as a young private. We deployed over to Saudi Arabia, did a 6-month tour over there, and came back. And through that whole process, I learned a lot about supply, and I think I did a bang up job because we didn't lose any money, and my commander, my boss, didn't have to pay anything, and we had everything accounted for, going and coming. So it was quite an experience.
Was it a little overwhelming at first?
Looking back, it probably was, but honestly, I was a go-getter. I was a fire starter back then, so I thought I could do anything. So I think part of that success was I was just willing to, I put in the work, I grinded, I did all the stuff that I think a lot of people struggle with. Whereas, the attention to detail, when you're talking logistics, supply, especially accounting for property, it's really about attention to detail. And for some reason or other, I was just driven, to look through stuff over and over and over again and make sure it was, attention to detail. There was some challenges, obviously, because I'm an E3, and, sometimes people, would try to strong arm me. But, I'd always go back to my leadership, and they always had my back to support me.
Now, for civilians that don't understand, what does it take logistically wise for a battalion or a unit, or what was it, like your battalion that was deployed for like a 6-month rotation or something?
Yeah.
What does it take for that? What moving pieces does it take to make that happen?
Yeah, so I mean, there's several different ways it could happen. I was part of a Patriot missile unit at the time, and the way that worked is, we fell in on pre-positioned equipment. So the military has pre-positioned equipment all around the world, where instead of us shipping it back and forth from the United States, it's there, and we just rotate the people in and out, in and out on the equipment. And so we didn't have a whole lot of stuff. I think we had like a plane's worth of equipment, some of our own tools and different things like that. And then it was just mainly, people on planes basically flying over. And then when we got there, we actually had to sign for a bunch of stuff that was already in place. That's kind of really where all the transactions and the accountability took place. Because it's important, we got there, we signed for the stuff. And then at the end of our tour, we had to make sure, we had all that stuff in place so the people came from behind us were set up for success and they had all they needed. But, it just depends on the different deployments, in my career, and we'll talk more about that. When I was on the special operations side for a while, we are more compartmentalized. We, take everything with us and go all in one fell swoop, that's kind of how they do it. And then you have some of the other ones when you're shipping more bigger conventional forces. It could be by train, it could be by boat. When you're talking, let's say like a combat brigade with tanks and planes or helicopters, I should say. A lot of times those will go by boat. They put them on a boat. It takes 30 days to get wherever it needs to go. So there's a lot of logistics involved when you're moving military units. It's literally planes, trains, and automobiles. You hear that saying, and it literally is, because let's say you're somewhere in the middle of the country, and you're going to the Middle East. Well, you got to train all your stuff down to one of the ports. Then it's got to get loaded onto a boat, and then on the other end, it's got to be downloaded. And usually on the other end, it's not trains; it's usually trucks. Line haul trucks that'll move stuff around depending on where you're going.
Yeah. So how long do you spend at Fort Polk?
So I did 3 years at Fort Polk, and decided, because I was 21 years old and I knew everything, I decided the Army wasn't for me. So I was going to get out and go find the grass on the greener grass on the other side. So I got out. The interesting story about that, which was I think it really kind of started. I didn't know then at the time. It started to really set myself apart from my peers. Was as I left, I separated as a specialist, and my command thought so highly of me. They actually gave me a MSM, which is a pretty high award for a specialist. Anybody that's been in the military a while, there's a lot of consternation about awards tied to certain ranks and so on and so forth. But they ended up giving me an MSM, which at the time I really didn't care. I didn't even know I had it because they mailed it somewhere and I never got it. And so, I think that was one of the things. Looking back, as I look back on my career, it was, what are those things that happened along the way that really kind of started to help propelling you as a soldier or as a service member as well. Yeah. So I got out. I knew everything. I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, which from a career perspective, it may not have been the best move, but from a life perspective, it was the best move because I met my wife when I was out in Atlanta. Ended up being there almost a year to the day. I got married to my wife, and decided, well, she's an Army military brat too. So we said, well, let's just go back in the military. And so we did. I signed back up in the military. I tried to go back in as a unit supply specialist, but they wouldn't let me. At the time, they were in need of combat arms. And so I ended up becoming a forward observer before I went back in. So I had to go off to Fort Sill, do the schooling for the forward observer, came back to Atlanta, and then we took our honeymoon, which was a 5-hour drive to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. I still don't live that down now 20-something years later, but that was our honeymoon. Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and then a week later, I was in air assault school. So,
oh yeah, good school there, buddy. I did air assault school over in Korea, and it was something else. Good times. Yeah.
Well, and then so just kind of you trek along and you look back in your career, and it's kind of weird because I don't reflect back on this, but sometimes as we're talking to people, you start to think back. So I arrive at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Part of the in-brief. I got to go talk to the sergeant major. It's Thursday. And so, I go, hey, I'm just getting here. I'm Specialist Willet, blah, blah, blah. He said, what? He said, when you go into air assault school? I said, well, I'm just getting settled in. My family's, oh, you're going to air assault school on Monday. I'm like, what? It's Thursday. He said, here's your packing list, blah, blah, blah. So before I could even bat an eye or think, I was in air assault school. Before I even actually really even processed my unit, I was in air assault school.
Craziness.
Another thing to get you skint up and, get you, builds that character and builds that appreciation for what you did. So finished out air assault school. And I knew coming out of forward observer school, this wasn't what I wanted to do long time. I mean, it was kind of cool, making stuff blow up and things like that. But I was like, it's too narrow focused for me. I mean, I don't want to just spend the rest of my life walking to places and blowing things up. I want to do more. I want to use more of my brain power. So I was telling, the people when I got there, hey, I'm not really crazy about this forward observer thing. And so, they kind of looked at me like I was crazy because I just showed up to a field artillery unit and I said, I don't want to be a forward observer. But it actually, looking back, it actually worked out. They put me in the S2 shop as a targeting specialist. So I did a little bit different aspect of being a forward observer. Got to work on security clearances. So I got to see a little bit different aspect of everything. I did a year there, and I've been telling them, hey, I want to get back in supply. I have the ability to do supply, so on and so forth. And so about a year goes by. I'm in the S2 shop. I guess I was doing good. I went to the promotion board. They sent me to the promotion board. And at the end of the promotion board, and I kid you not, the way the points were back then, if I passed the promotion board, I was going to get promoted pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
I got done with the promotion board, and the sergeant major looks at me. He's like, hey, congratulations. You're now promotable. Next week, report to the Battalion S4 shop. You're our new Battalion S4 NCOIC. Now, I haven't even pinned on E5 yet, and that's an E7 position.
Yeah.
And mind you, there was 2 E6s working in there already. So this was going to be interesting to say the least. And that, going back to what I said about the MSM, that actually came into play during that board. He's like, you got an MSM? He's like, you didn't get no, so the sergeant major was like yelling at me, telling me I didn't get an MSM. And I guess he because I kind of yelled at him back. I'm looking back at it and I was like, man, I can't believe I did that. But I got into a heated argument with him that I earned that damn award. And I think he must have liked that because he gave me one of the key NCO positions on the staff after that. So it was quite interesting.
It's funny because when I came back from Korea, I got assigned to the S4 shop because there wasn't a slot back in the company. So I was the S4's personal security. That was my job title. So I had my little run of supply. I was working with, 92 Yankees at the time. Yeah. And Sergeant Garrett was our Sergeant First Class. And then we had a LT. Well, it was a Captain Busa. And then when he moved on, we had a lieutenant. But that was my run with supply. So I learned a lot. You know, it was a
Yeah.
pretty cool deal, but I was more of driving this guy around and making sure he got money and for whatever, but it was cool.
Yeah. And so again, if you look back at just all the things that happen along your life, along your career to where you get to where you are now is it's just amazing. So, another year or so goes by, I'm in this E7 position as an E5, it worked out great. I was able to, people, they respected me, even though I didn't wear the rank of an E7. Luckily I had a captain in there. If I had any issues with people squawking at me, he would handle it. But I guess I did a good job. They kept me in there for as long as they did. They basically didn't bring on any new E7s while I was there. And about another year and some change went by, and obviously my battalion commander knew who I was because I was one of his primary staff NCOs, and he's like, "Hey man, your time's coming up. What do you want to do next? What are you going to do next?" I was like, "Well, I'd like to try to get my MOS changed back to supply." And so we started a process where you had to submit a request to try to change my MOS back from 13 Fox back to 92 Yankees. I was already certified as a 92 Yankee from my previous enlistment. And so we went through that process and went months. I mean, we went to the point where we got the commanding general of the 101st to sign the thing saying, "Hey, based off of he's already doing the work, let him change his MOS back." But at the time, the policy was you couldn't go from combat arms to a support role because they were the numbers were so scarce in the combat arms at the time. So they just kept disapproving it, and then went by for 6 months. And I had generals signing paperwork, and they still would not approve it.
Wow.
And so I was like, I didn't really know what I was going to do. Honestly, between me and you and everybody out there, me and my wife was like, I can't get out. I don't have anything else to do. I gotta stay in the military. But when I was talking to my leadership, I always keep that from, well, if I can't get back to supply, then I'm probably gonna end up getting out. That was kind of my going in, and I kept that approach all the way to the end. Even though if they called my bluff on it, I probably would have reenlisted anyway. But if I did that and I didn't push as hard as I did, I wouldn't have gotten the career that I had. So, long story short, I could not get approved for the reclass. I could not get approved to go back from forward observer back to supply. They just wouldn't approve it. They basically said, "This is it. We're not, stop submitting stuff. We're not going to approve it anymore." So one day, I was getting close. I may have been about 3 months out from my separation date, and the battalion commander calls me in one day. He's like, "Hey, you sure? This is what you want. This is the sword you're gonna die on. Is this change in MOS?" And I stuck to my guns. Like, "Yep. This is it. I'm gonna go ahead and get out if I can't change back. Is this what I want to do? I know I don't want to be a long-term forward observer." And so he said, "Okay." So I didn't think nothing of it. A few days go by. I think that was like a Thursday or something. A few days goes by. I go in on Monday, the following Monday, and I'm doing PT, and I come back to my office, and I got and the phone rings. It's my battalion commander. I don't, just randomly calling me. He's like, "Hey, you need to go to the reenlistment office and reenlist." And I'm like, "Sir, but he's like, "Stop. Just go to the reenlistment office and go reenlist." I'm like, "All right, I'll play your game." So on and so forth. So I go down to the reenlistment office, and I was like, "Hey, Colonel such and such said to come down here. He told me I had to come down here and reenlist, but like, I'm not reenlisting unless you guys can get me supply. I'm not going to do it." So on and so forth. So he's like, "All right, give me your social," plugs it in. So he brings up my record in the system. In the system, it has me as a 92 Yankee. So, really? Yeah. And so he's like, "All right, well, let me draft up your paperwork," and so he drafted up my paperwork to re-enlist as a 92 Yankee. I signed that bad boy, and I legally was now re-enlisted as a 92 Yankee supply specialist again. And so I didn't know at the time. So I talked to him afterwards. I don't know who he talked to. He cut some deal, but the agreement was, this was the agreement. The agreement was, "Hey, whoever he worked it out the deal with, we'll put his 92 Yankee back, but he's got to go to Korea." And so, so when I signed the paperwork, I'm like, you know what? I'm thinking long term. Who cares? I'll go to Korea. it doesn't matter. I just get my 92 Yankee back. I can, get back into the MOS that I want. So I signed the paperwork, and then I'm officially a 92 Yankee. And then obviously the time is getting ready to close where I got a PCS to Korea. So I'm going through all that process. Didn't get to the part where I was out processing yet, but I was doing all the stuff leading up to, going overseas.
Yeah.
And one day I came back in my office, and I had a little sticky on my desk saying, "Hey, call this guy over at 160th Special Operations Regiment." Like, why would someone, I thought maybe we had to transfer property or something like that. Or I did have a buddy when I worked in the S2 shop. One of my buddies that was there, an NCO, he actually went over there, and he was telling me how he enjoyed it. And so I called the guy back. He said, "Hey, what would you think about coming over to the special operations side?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know." He's like, "Well, you'd have to go to Airborne school, and you'd have to go to SEER school. That would be one of the prerequisites for you to come over." And I think to myself, well, I don't know, but I'm thinking, I don't want to go to Korea. And I heard great things about the unit that was over there. And so I said, "Yeah, sure." I said, "But the only one problem, I'm going to Korea. I leave in like 60 days. He said, "Oh, no, you're not. I already got those orders deleted. Go see this lady and get your orders to come over to us." So I mean, literally a few hours later, I went and got my orders, and I went over to the 160th, which was pretty much what, kind of changed the entire direction of my career at that point.
So you never even went to Korea?
Not that time. I ended up going to Korea later, but not that time.
Gotcha. So where did you go when you worked with Special Operations Fort Bragg?
Yeah, no, I was at Fort Campbell, actually.
Campbell.
So I stayed at Campbell, and the unit there, there's a couple of soft units there, 160th and 5th Special Forces Group. And so I went to 160th initially, and they have this thing called Green Platoon. So they basically, for 5 weeks, they put you through hell. Basically, they want to make sure that they're bringing on the people that want to be in the unit, not someone that's going to tap out based off of the high op tempo, based off of some of the situations they put you in. So for 5 weeks, I mean, it's from dusk to dawn, doing some of the craziest crap, getting the crap beat out of you. I mean, it is rough. I mean, they still do it to this day. It's it's a way of really weeding out people that want to be there and don't want to be there. But I look back on those days. I mean, this was over 20 years ago, and I still remember some of those days vividly. Carrying telephone poles for like 8 hours, where you couldn't feel your shoulders, or sitting in mud pits for 3 or 4 hours where you're just low crawling back and forth for no, it was just everything about was, all right, let's just do all the craziest stuff we can to see how many people we can get quit, and it worked. I mean, we start off with, I think, about 60, and, I don't know, I think we're down to about 25 that actually, stayed on. But, once you get through it, it was well worth it. I mean, my time in SOF was probably my most cherished time in the military, just for the fact that everybody that was there, we had a mission, we were resourced well, and everybody carried their own weight. There was no, if we had someone that just wasn't meant to be there, they were gone. Literally they were gone. And so it was so enjoyable. And not only that, the camaraderie, the familyhood, even outside of the military, it's just something that I've never seen, since leaving that community. It was great.
Wow.
And so I get there, and at the time I make E6 at the time. I get there, and there I was on September 11th, 2001. I was in Roswell, New Mexico, planning to attack aliens for work. We were actually doing a site survey for some training that we were going to be doing down there in Roswell, New Mexico. And then 9/11 hit. And, immediately, I think like everybody else that was around and looking at that time, I mean, we're kind of like, oh boy, we don't know what was going to be next. We just knew that our names were going to be called. Something was going to happen with us pretty quick.
100%.
And so, everything was grounded, so we couldn't get anywhere. So I was the logistics guy, so I had to figure out how to get. It was 7 of us. How am I going to get us home? So I ended up getting a rental van from the airport, and we drove 18 hours back to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And once we got back, it was already hopping and popping. I mean, planning was going on and so on and so forth. They already had approval for, to launch some folks. And, there was me and a couple other people like, all right, who's going to go at, who's going in first, who's, so on and so forth. And, I told, hey, man, I'll do it. I mean, send me in and I'll do it. So I get there, they start giving me the mission briefs. I start looking at stuff. It's so amazing. I think back now, and they're showing me maps and information about Uzbekistan. I'm like, what is Uzbekistan? What is Uzbekistan? I don't even know what Uzbekistan is. And so, because it was when I was in school, it was Russia. I mean, all that stuff was not broken down like it is now. All the stands and stuff. It was just all Russia. So I didn't know anything about it. So kind of had to learn about the culture about that. And it's crazy. I won't go into too much detail, but their jet came and picked us up. We hit a couple locations, and there we were. October, going in through. I think by the time we got there, September 20th, I was on ground in Uzbekistan. It was that quick. Wow. And then most people, if you watch the news, then you kind of get an idea at some point when we were into Afghanistan. So we were, we got into pretty quickly after that. But one of my roles was I was the lead, not just for my unit. I was pretty much the lead logistics person for the entire Operation Enduring Freedom at the time. I was up at the north, and we had another element down south on a ship. And that was probably, you want to talk about being overwhelmed. That's probably the most overwhelmed I've ever been. Here I am in E6, and I was responsible for, I think we had at any given time 72 C-17s that were inbound coming in every 2 hours that we had to download because they were, and they weren't, the operational piece was outpacing the logistics piece. So, they were sending us stuff, and we didn't have capability to get some of the stuff off the plane, and they were sending it. We got helicopters, but we didn't have fuelers yet. It was just crazy how once they pushed that button on the other end. I mean, I stayed up for 4 days straight until I finally got some people there that could, kind of do some of the stuff that we're doing. And I'll tell you that experience is something I'll never forget, because as an E6, I was running like an entire logistical operation there. I mean, everybody was looking at me for the logistics. And then, I had Uzbek commanders running around giving us gas. I was like, hey, I need gas. And next thing you know, their army's a little bit different. They're beating some dude up to tell him to go get the truck, and some old Russian truck that barely ran would come over. And I was like, well, I don't want to put these things next to our helicopters, man. I don't know how safe they are. So, I go talk to the pilots, like, man, we don't care. Have them put that gas in there. We got to go. We ain't got time to, that's kind of the mentality in SOF is, just give me what I need, get the hell out of the way so we get the job done. So, so Afghanistan, and that just started a whirlwind of, I stayed in 160th for almost 10 years to 2008. And then I went over to 5th Special Forces Group, where I did my first sergeant time. So I was it worked out great, because I was able to literally stay at Fort Campbell for 14 years. Well, my wife is, I was never there, but for 14 years we lived at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And through that whole process, because the assignments worked out for me. I went from 101st to 160th, and then the 5th group. And, and I think when I was telling you about kind of, if you look in my bio and things I tell people, it's hard for people to understand that haven't been in the SOF community, when it comes to deployments. So I don't know. I honestly have to go through I think I've deployed 30 times into the Middle East, just based off of the rotations and all that stuff. So I went obviously initially in 2001, 2002. I went back in 2002. There was a 2-year break there, 2003, 2004. They let me get some time at home, but home time is not the same as you would think, because I was TDY everywhere stateside. And then 2004, 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, 2009, and 2010, I was either in Iraq or Afghanistan for anywhere from 3 to 6 months of all those years.
Wow.
just going back and forth, turning and burning. So spent a lot of time over there, and it was really later in my career. It was really eye opening because my last duty assignment, I spent most of my time in the Middle East, and to see where it is now compared to where it was when I was basically there early on.
Yeah, first there, first.
It's pretty crazy.
Wow. Yeah, lots changed. I mean, I don't even, do we even still have troops over there right now?
We do, but the numbers are very small. The numbers are very small, and there's a lot of disjointing in the way we're doing it because we're kind of piecemealing organizations together. I think one of the things, and I can speak mainly from the Army side, probably about, it was like 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we went to a concept called modularity, where whole units wouldn't be whole units anymore. You could send by team, you could send by platoon, you could send by company, and that's mainly what they're doing now, and it's really makes it a struggle for we used to call it command and control, but to be able to build that cohesive unit, because over there you'd have people from all compos, reserve, guard, active, and they would come from all different units. So you could have a battalion level command with staff that had 9 companies from 3 different compos, but from 5 different units. So it's crazy, and the numbers are dramatically lower. I mean, when I was going there in the mid 2000s, we had 100,000 in Iraq, 100,000 in Afghanistan. I mean, we're 5,000 in both places now. I mean, now maybe a little bit less. But we're still covering the same amount of ground because the mission's there. So and there's a lot of contract work that goes on over there as well. So I mean, it's just pretty eye opening. My experiences way back in the middle 2000s definitely played a part in my ability to do my last job, because I had an understanding of the whole infrastructure of the operations over there. It was just much more difficult to do now because we're doing it on a much smaller scale when it comes to resources. People, we collapse a lot of bases. So, in Iraq, for instance, we had all these bases all over. We're in Iraq, we only got 2 or 3 bases now. So logistically, it becomes a lot more challenging than it was before. Plus, the other thing on that side too is you have new things that popped up like Syria and stuff like that we're managing now. But yeah, I'll tell you, it's interesting. I don't know what the answer is to what's going on in the Middle East. I just know, I don't know that we could do anything too drastic one way or the other. I mean, it is what it is. I think at some point we can't be there forever, but I don't have the answer. But I guess at some point, we'll have to pull out, and I guess we'll see what happens. I think it's all cyclical. I mean, think about it. I mean, we did Iraq twice, so
yeah,
who knows what the future will be.
Yeah, it's like people ask me all the time, we should just pull out of Afghanistan, and I don't have an answer for it either. I mean, we've been there for so long now. It's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
Do you, all these lives that were lost, do you just pull out? And I don't know what the contrast is over there now. What difference, that we've actually made, is it still the same? They still hate us just as much. You know what I mean? You build something, they blow it up. It's like, what do you do?
Yeah, and I think part of the challenge is, and because as my last assignment was more at the strategic level, so I think part of the challenge is, and it has nothing to do with anybody that's sitting right now in the military or anything. I mean, maybe some of them back in the day. We don't have a goal. We don't have we don't know. I mean, what are we trying to accomplish in both places? I mean, I think that's the problem is we don't have that goal. We don't have the mission per se. The mission can't just be keep ourselves safe and keep violence down. I mean, okay, I mean that's part of the mission, but that's not an end state. That's a continual thing. And I mean, the only way you're going to be able to do that is to have a continual permanent presence, which I know we definitely can't. So yeah, I don't know. I'm really torn because I poured a lot of my my life into that area, and all those different, I've been to just about every country in the Middle East, based off of all kinds of different operations I've been to. So I lost a lot of friends there, and a lot of people got injured, and there's a place, even though I'll never go back there ever again. I have no choice. I have no desire to ever go back there. There's something about the place that's near and dear to my heart, because I'm going to be connected with it forever because of all the friends that I lost and people that I know that are injured, and even my ailments now, you know what I mean? Where, they're talking things like this burn pit stuff and things like that. There's a lot of us out here. And, I know some friends, some of the locations I went to are battling cancer now, because, chemicals and stuff that we didn't know at the time were there. But yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer. And, unfortunately, when you start trying to run down that road, it usually goes political on the political side. And I'm not a politician. And that's actually one of the reasons why I decided to get out of the military, because as you do get more senior, you're forced into more of a political type atmosphere. And that just wasn't me. I'm the type of person. I grew up, if you take care of your people, they'll take care of you. And that don't matter if I'm at the company level or if I was at the, the strategic, I was at the 2-star level. I still felt my role and responsibilities was to make sure my people were taken care of and they were resourced to do their job. But once you get to some of the highest levels, it's just the way it is. It just becomes more political, and you get pulled in different directions where, it takes you away from what I thought my core mission was, which was, supporting my service members and making sure they're resourced.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's a buddy I talk to daily. I think he's watching, actually. Name's Joe. He was actually stationed at Fort Campbell, and he always tells, because obviously I didn't make it to that level of rank, and he was like, once you get to a certain rank, it's so political, and I couldn't go down that road because I'm not PC at all. I'm a grunt, and I tell it the way it is, and sometimes it comes off the wrong way, sometimes it comes off the right way, and in the end, I just don't have a filter, and I should probably be more PC. I try, but it's hard, man. It is.
And the reality of it is, too, I say that too, but I mean, there's some political acumen that I have. I mean, there's no way, even now in the military, even at some of my lower level command positions as a CSM, if I didn't have some political acumen, I wouldn't survive. I mean, it would just that's just it's just the environment now. You can't be, you can't just run around saying whatever you want anymore. It just doesn't work that way. IG will get you and you'll be gone before you know it.
And there was something I was going to ask you, since you were at that level. When I was getting out in 07, I did my deployment. I was actually stationed at Fort Stewart, so I know that whole area, Hinesville and everything. The level of soldier coming out of basic training, even in combat arms, there was zero discipline, and that really, I mean, I was watching privates talk to senior. When I came, I know you were before my time. I didn't even want to see an E7. I didn't want to see an E6. I definitely didn't want to see any. You know what I mean? I didn't talk to them guys, because if I did, I knew I was in some trouble. You know what I mean? Yeah. And guys coming out of basic, because I got sent to Fort Riley to help train up guys because it was a stand-up battalion, and I'm like, I seen E1s talking to E7s like, what in the hell is going on in the military? And what I want to know, I'm trying to get in your head, what's your outtake of that? Is your hands tied to that, or is it?
Well, so I think, the military will always be a reflection of society. Mm-hmm. And I think some of it is societal. Going back to, one of the biggest mistakes, I guess, again, I wasn't at that level back then, but maybe it was a necessity. One of the biggest mistakes we made around that time, you were talking about, 2006, 2007, is, we let anybody in because we wanted to ramp up our numbers. And I'll tell you, I lived through that pain a few years later as a first sergeant and a command sergeant major. Once we started trying to go back and say, all right, who are all these people that we let in on the surge? Man, I had people in my unit that were, attempted murder, drug. It just came to a head. I was, especially my time in battalion, probably around 11 or 12, we had really starting to ramp down. And first thing that we're starting to do is like looking through records of all these soldiers, service members that we had. And it was so crazy to look at who they let in during that time, which really, I think in some aspects, made a huge dig on the culture of the military at some point, as they were in our ranks for that long. And the other aspect of it too is society in general it's just changed. I mean, I don't know. I don't want to sound like I'm old fart here that's a grumpy old man, but it's just, even to this day, it's kind of morphed into people expect things to be given to them. The whole everyone gets a trophy. I noticed about 10 years ago or whatever in the Army, I could speak for the Army, when they started going, well, people, soldiers aren't getting promoted fast enough. So if you don't do what you're supposed to do, we're just going to give them sergeant. Whereas, when I came up, you had to bust your butt and you had to go through stuff to get sergeant. It wasn't given to you. You actually had to earn it. And so what happened is during that period of time, and I, again, speak from the Army perspective, because that's what I know, a lot of those, gifted sergeants became sergeants. And then we built a corps of NCOs that really just got handed some stripes and didn't really earn the stripes. And then because we did it so fast, they weren't properly trained. And so now you fast forward and you take that year after year after year, and you create that gap bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Now you have in the military, in my instance, you have E8s and sometimes even E9s that are in this mindset of, I shouldn't have to do anything. Things should be given to me, and it's mind blowing. It's absolutely baffling. And you got senior NCOs complaining that, the discipline and things in their organization aren't going according to plan, because they're blaming the E5s, but the reality of it is they haven't even trained the E5s, or they're not even holding the E5s accountable. And it's just like all this finger pointing, and no one's actually saying, the buck stops here. I'm responsible and we're going to fix this. And if you're part of my section, my squad, my platoon, you're going to toe the line. You're going to be disciplined. You're going to do your training and all that stuff. We just don't have that. And where we do, we have some pockets of it. It doesn't bleed over, because all those soldiers look and say, well, all of them don't have to do this. And then then you get looked at as being a toxic leader because you're trying to hold people accountable. I tell you, my time my main time when I was trying to really get after discipline and instill standards was when I was a battalion CSM, and this is what was so crazy too. You mentioned this before. During my time, I had a 1,500 person battalion, and a lot of the soldiers seen me more than they seen their sergeant or staff sergeant, because they just weren't out in front leading them or coaching them or teaching them. And so I took a different approach, and I try to hold all my NCOs accountable. I laser focused and beat up all my NCOs to do what they were supposed to be doing. But at this point, I literally could not enforce anything, because the military had so many programs that allowed them, I call them squirters, they allowed them to run away and go and, if hey, all the fat people, we're all doing PT at the battalion level. We're going to get, you're going to lose weight. And, I told them up front, I mean, this isn't anything personal, but you're in the military. You got to be in shape. These are the standards the military set forth. If you can't meet these standards, then either you're going to meet them or you're going to go home. We're going to get chapter. And I do that. And next day, 18 people are over at behavioral health. So on and so forth. And then once they go into that track, as a leader, I can't touch them because, you can't, and so it's just such a vicious, it's even that way today. There's so many programs that allow service members to escape any type of structure or discipline or anything like that. It's just, to me, it's impossible for a leader that actually puts the work in and wants to put the work in to hold people accountable now, because all the programs allow for service members to go run away from their command, and you can't touch them from a command perspective. Now, I know there's programs that we should have. I'm not, like I said, I'm not some old crusty old fart we definitely needed better programs than we did when I was coming up. But I think the pendulum swung all the way to the other side, where we have put military leaders in a position where they don't have the ability to enforce standards and discipline because there's so many ways for the service members to fight back based off of whatever they want to do. I use behavioral health one because it's the go-to. That's the playbook for the service member. Anything you want to do, they go to behavioral health. And
yeah, I don't know if there's any repercussions. You know what I mean? Me and my buddy was talking about that too. And like from the BDU to the ACU, that was a big letting the turds of the military. Now it gave them a bigger chance to be a bigger turd. You know what I mean? You're not spit shining your boots. You're not getting your uniform pressed. And that uniform, you just take it out of the, like my buddy says, take it out of the dryer, shake it a couple times, throw it on, and you look like a turd, and the military gave in to them. I wouldn't say give in to them, but it gave them an edge to even look more turdish. You know what I mean? So
they designed those uniforms exactly for that. I mean, which was, like you said, wash and wear, where, and to your point, I mean, I remember back in the day, man, you had to put in time. You had to make sure your uniform was at least pressed, or, didn't look like, wasn't all wrinkled. Shine your boots. You could tell the level of detail and the level of discipline that someone had by looking at their boots. You could look at them immediately and tell, and it's just I don't know, but the other part of it though too is going back to what I was saying, where we created a new culture. So I say, military leaders are in a place now where they really can enforce discipline and standards. But the reality, a lot of these military leaders I'm talking about aren't trying to. They're taking the easy road out. They don't want to do the hard work of actually instilling discipline and creating structure within their organization. So it's a mixed bag, because when I was at the strategic level, and I had an input into policy and I would go and say, these are some of the challenges, and the argument I'd get back is, well, if the current leaders aren't going to use the policy that are in place now, why would we even change the policy? I'm like, well, they're kind of right. I mean, honestly, I can control what I can control. I was doing what I could do in my organization, but is the leader to the left and the leader to the right of me, are they doing it? And the answer most times is not. No,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's I just hope, there's only so technology can take it so far. We're always going to have a disciplined force. There's always going to be a need for boots on ground somewhere. And I hope we don't stray too far off, become too undisciplined and too out of whack, where, we don't have that superiority over our enemies. I think technology will always be there. But yeah, I mean, it was probably my last few years in the military. It was just really a challenge based off of, we spent so much time consumed with things that we shouldn't have been consumed with, when it's, just getting people to do basic stuff when we shouldn't have to as leaders.
Okay. So, I got one question I'm going to ask you. If it offends somebody, how do you feel about females going into combat arms?
I don't have an issue with it as long as the standards don't change. But then you get two sides to everything. They say, all right, well, the standards aren't going to change, but then they change the standards. I don't know. I do want the best person to be able to do the job, but they got to be capable of doing it. And again, nothing against females, but the way our bodies are composed, I mean, we're built differently, and there's certain things that females and males do differently. I mean, even on the PT test, they try to do different standards. I know they're looking to change that, but I think we just got to acknowledge that. And in the same breath, I know some kick butt females that could go and do that stuff. That can put rounds down range. They are strong and can do it. The problem is those are far and few between, and as long as they and as long as they keep the standards fine, I think I'm good with it. The problem is I think what happens, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. It becomes more of a political football than it is an actual necessity or need in the military. For me, you make, all right, make it where they can do it, and then let's move on to something else. Don't make it where they can do it, and then we just continuously talk about it and say, hey, there's not enough. Well, it's open to them. Whether they, if they want to do it, then do it. If not, then not, and let it naturally occur. Open it up and let it naturally occur. But don't change the standards. I guess that would be my viewpoint on it.
Yeah, I got a couple questions I want to ask you, and we'll wind it on down. What makes Command Sergeant Major Willett tick?
So this is something I learned the hard way in transition. So let me wrap up kind of my career.
Okay,
that way so I can kind of walk you into what I'm getting ready to talk about. So I went to 160th, left there in 2008, went to 5th Special Forces Group that did my first sergeant time. And then I was wore out, man. That's what I told you all those years. 2010, I was like, hey, I need to go do something else. I need to change the pace. I'm wore out. Mama actually wanted to know who I was again, because I was gone so much all the time. Sure. So I got a real cool assignment at the National Ground Intelligence Center in Charlottesville, Virginia. And most people don't even know what it is. It's the Army's intelligence center. It's all things intelligence for the Army. So it was a pretty cool assignment. Got a whole different world view of things, because there was like 10 military and all the other thousands were all civilians. And then got selected for the Sergeant Major's Academy. So it went right from there, 10 months in Virginia, then went right to the Sergeant Major's Academy in Fort Bliss, Texas. And coming right out of the Sergeant Major's Academy, I was selected to be a CSM right off the bat, but I wasn't going to fill my position for a year. So they pre-positioned me. We got out here at the Joint Base Lewis McChord, and they pre-positioned me, and I did some staff time as a support operations sergeant major at the time. And then went right into battalion command here, and then quickly got selected for brigade. I only did 15 months at battalion, and then quickly got selected for brigade. And that's where Korea comes back in. So my brigade that I got selected for was in Korea. It was a sustainment brigade in Korea. Went over to Korea, did 26 months there. That was 2014 to 2016. I knew I was eligible for the nominative program, and I'll run down what that program is a little bit. And I had an itching feeling. I didn't know for sure I was going to get selected, but I had a feeling it was going to happen. But it just so happened where the time I left Korea, I didn't get selected initially for the nominative program. So I went and became an IG Sergeant Major for all of 3 months. The Army, in their infinite wisdom, sent me to an assignment. I don't know why they did. I wasn't going to argue with them. I got to go to get IG certified. I went to get IG certified, and I went to an assignment as an IG Sergeant Major, which is supposed to be a 3-year locked in. You're supposed to be covered. Well, 3 months into it, I got selected to do the nominative program, and my last assignment was 1st Theater Sustainment Command. So 1st Theater Sustainment Command used to be at Bragg. The headquarters used to be at Bragg, and it just moved to Fort Knox. So I came in as we were moving into Fort Knox. But the thing that's unique about 1st Theater Sustainment Command is, even though we had a headquarters like at Knox, our mission was the Middle East sustainment logistics. So we had a headquarters at Knox, and we also had a headquarters at Camp Airborne, Kuwait. Oh, yeah. So for my last 2 years, I spent most of my time downrange in Middle East, and I had soldiers and service members in 12 different countries in the Middle East. So I spent all my time. I traveled over 1 million miles in about 20 months, just com air back and forth. And then I don't even know how much military intra-theater I was moving around when I was over there. And, and two things that happened. One, my body was really breaking down from all that travel. You just can't, a human is not meant to travel that much. The time zones were different. Obviously 7 hours, 8 hours difference. It was just wearing me out. I didn't feel I was making the impact that I wanted to have, based off of what I was kind of telling you, how I was getting pulled in other directions. All my quote unquote peers or senior level other sergeant majors didn't seem to, my mind meld did not work with them. They were more concerned about their next assignment and what they were doing. I was more concerned about my organization and my people. And, people would come out and visit me, and they, I'd get the brief ready, because I wanted to, based off wherever they were coming from, I wanted to tell how their organization could help me and my service members do this Middle East mission. And it just wasn't there. I never really, I was kind of oddball. They wanted me to talk about, what are you doing to sell yourself, this, the other thing. I was like, no, I want to talk about resources that we can. And so long story short, body was breaking down. I was tired of the kind of the political stuff. And, I told him, I'm done. The way the program works is, the nominative program means you're a command team with a general. So my command team, my battle buddy was a 2-star general. If I stayed in, there was only 3 other positions I could do. I wasn't going to be the Sergeant Major Army probably. And there was only 2 other positions I could do. So I'm thinking to myself, I never see my wife. I'm only home about 5 days a month. Got this travel. My body's breaking down. What am I doing? What am I hanging on for? You know what I mean? And I was finding myself, I was getting frustrated because I just didn't seem to be able to coalesce other leaders at my level to want to focus on what I thought was important, which is our mission and our people. And I said, well, I was starting to get I'm not a person that talks bad, but I was starting to get kind of salty all the time. And it's like, before I start to get salty and kind of show myself in a bad light, it's time for me to move on. So I made the decision, kind of a split-second decision. I told them I did it all on my own. I did it as fast as I could. You can drop your retirement paperwork at 9 months. I dropped it right at 9 months. I had 4 months transition leave built up. So literally, my transition was less than 5 months, and you factor in I was traveling back and forth to the Middle East during that time. So I squeezed in all my VA because I never went to the doctor. My medical records were this thick. I did all that stuff with the VA as fast as I could and did all that stuff. I left October 5th, 2018. I left Afghanistan for the last time. 28 October, 3 weeks later, I had my retirement ceremony. 1 November, I'm here in Washington State because we moved back out here to Washington. And it was something that I had never went through. I went from, 3 phones, several different time zones, people constantly emailing and calling, so on and so forth, to showing up here and nothing. I mean, literally I had nothing. I had no job. I didn't, nothing. It was just, don't get me wrong, financially, I don't need to work. I don't need to work anymore, just based off of the decisions me and my wife made, because I was deployed so much, I didn't have time to spend money. So,
yeah.
But I thought this was going to be the greatest thing because, all that stress would be gone and so on and so forth. And, people were saying, hey, just take a break, take a knee, you earned it, so on and so forth. And that was my going in thought. But I quickly realized I couldn't live without that adrenaline. I couldn't live without that go. I couldn't live. And so about 2 weeks into it, I literally started creating stress. I got to find a job. I got to do something. And I went through a horrible bout of depression. I couldn't find my way. I was just miserable. So I went and tried to deal with it the way I could, which I thought was getting a job. I got a job. I actually landed a great job with the state of Washington out here, and got there, went into a mid-level position. I was promoted to deputy director of the agency I was in within 3 months, because wow, everything was going good. But about 4 or 5 months in, I was just miserable. I was miserable. I didn't feel I was making an impact with folks. I mean, I was doing stuff, but I wasn't really leading. The position wasn't really a leadership. It wasn't a leadership position. It was more paperwork and different things like that. And I couldn't do it. So, I walked away. I walked away from it. Through this whole time, I've been doing this higher military stuff, which is an organization that does DoD Skill Bridge internships. It's a great program, best transition program out there. If someone is getting ready to, transition from the military, they need to check out the DoD Skill Bridge program. It's the best program out there. So I quit that job, and I said, hey, I went to the guys at higher military. I said, hey, I'll do this because I was doing it part-time. I'll do this full-time. That was probably about 18 months ago. And through this job, I'm able to interact with service members still. I'm able to work with employers to build jobs for service members. I feel like I got that sense of purpose back. I feel like I'm making a difference. And so I'm in a good place right now based off of all that. And we're doing some great things at higher military to get service members into internships. And so I think you asked what drives me. It's that purpose. And I didn't know that until my purpose was actually taken away when I left the military. Once my purpose was taken away, I left the military. I spiraled downhill really fast, drinking, depression, so on and so forth. And I couldn't put my finger on it, because here I was financially stable, didn't really need anything. We could literally just sit around the house and do nothing all day if I wanted to. But I was miserable. I couldn't do that. It's because I feel you got to have a purpose. And I think it's not just me. I think it's anybody. You have to have a purpose. And, those people that say that, hey, when you retire, you just disconnect and you'll be good. Man, yeah, there probably are some people that can go out on the lake and fish and do all that stuff. But if you don't, for most of us, though, if you don't figure out what your purpose is, what your why is, like we like to talk about in the transition space, you're going to struggle dramatically and you're going to waste a lot of time. Figure it and trying to go down different avenues to figure out, what that path is. That's why we talk about getting a mentor all the time, a civilian mentor, not an active duty mentor, because active duty people know nothing about transition. You know what I mean? And so the kind of long way around the story to answer your question, I think it's just the purpose, having that purpose.
Yeah. And see, doing this right here is mine. Honestly, I absolutely enjoy it. What unit did you serve in that was your favorite, all-time favorite, that just was a blast?
Hands down, 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. Easily the most enjoyable unit I ever served in. I did nothing red tape wise. Everything was all, here's your mission, here's your resources. We're not going to tell you how to do it. Go figure it out. Go. And then when I was home, people are always checking in with my wife, always having a kind of events. When I was gone, when I was deployed or I was TDY, I knew, one, that I could completely focus on what I needed to do, because there was such a family structure within our organization that my wife felt that she was part of a family too. So easily 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. I actually wouldn't have left there if I could have found a first-time position. So my desire to want to continue progressing in the military kind of trumped leaving there, because I would have stayed there forever if I could have. There just was no positions for me there.
Favorite hobby, or do you have a hobby?
Well, it used to be running, which I need to get back onto. Unfortunately, it's probably a bad hobby. I'm into craft beers out here in Washington State, so that's probably not a good hobby. Yeah, so
craft beers are good, man.
Yeah, no, that's probably my big thing is my craft beers, and I got my Traeger in the backyard that I fire up just about every day. So not the healthiest hobbies, but it is what I do. So,
if you have a favorite band, which one?
That's a tough one. Yeah, I don't think I have a favorite band. And I'm honestly, I'm open to a lot of different musics. So it's really, I'm really open-ended when it comes to music. I know what I like and I like. I mean, I'm not really all into any much country. I'm not into hard rock. I'm all in between, hip hop or I could do, there's some, if it's not too country, if there's some is not too hard rock. I don't know. I'm kind of I don't have a azimuth straightforward on music. I listen to all different things. It's my playlist is probably really, really eclectic and weird.
Gotcha. Last question, last thing. If there's something you could tell a young soldier right now that you could go back and change your life, what would it be? To not make that mistake that you made or you've seen made in the military, what would it be?
I don't know. That's a hard one because things that I thought at the time were mistakes, looking back, usually turned out to be, it happened for a reason. But I think what I would say, and this plays in, maybe I'm doing a pitch for where my current state of my mind is, what I would say is, this is what I see from where I'm at right now, is you don't have to be getting ready to get out of the military to start thinking about transition. I think that was probably one of the biggest things, whether you're an E3 with only 2 years in, or you're an 06 with 35 years in. at some point you're going to get out of the military. And what I see too often is a couple of things. A trend where I think people overthink that their veteran status is going to be an easy button for them to get a job, and they're going to get out here and get a job easy. That's not the case.
Nope.
And I see people get started way too late in the process. You know, there's a lot of people out here, veterans like us, we're willing to help. But if you come to me so late in the process that we don't have the ability to put you in the programs or be able to point you in the right directions, or you haven't done anything to prepare yourself for transition, it's really hard to help. And I really wish more, not just on the service member side. I wish the actual services would do more through professional military education to at least talk about, hey, this military thing is temporary for all of us. Make sure you're still, you know, you don't got to get all invested in it, but at least do something on a professional perspective outside of the military to kind of keep yourself, you know, ready to go when it comes time. And so, you know, that's probably my biggest thing, because it's the thing that's kind of tugs at my heart the most now, is where I see service members from all services, because I deal with service members for all services, just wait to the last minute to start actually getting serious about their transition. And, you know, they're blowing up my inbox saying, hey, I need a job, blah, blah. Well, you know, what were you doing? You know, you knew you were separating, but you didn't do anything now, you know. And so I think that would probably be my biggest thing. But it's not just for the service members. I want to see the services do it as well. You know, at least have a discussion about it at schools, when they go to schools at the professional military. Unfortunately, that I've been working at it because I do know people in those areas, but the culture of the military is readiness. And let's just be perfectly honest. Once they know someone is in transition status, you kind of get shoved to the side, and you don't get a whole lot of love, because you're not on the team no more, and you're not focused on what the military in general is focused on, which is readiness. So it could be a challenge.
Yeah. Well, man, I know you got stuff to do. Jason, I really appreciate you coming on. You know, I hit you up on Messenger and you agreed, and I can't thank you for your time enough for your time. And, it means the world to me for you to come on, you know, share your story with people, and hopefully somebody gets inspired enough to become the rank that you were. You know, I never came close to that by no means. But I respect you, and I thank you for coming on, man. I can't thank you enough.
Hey, Alan, I really appreciate the opportunity. You know, one of the things that I tell people is, veterans, you know, don't be afraid to tell your story, man. I mean, you got to tell your story. We need people out here to tell stories so we can get rid of the stupid misnomers out there. You know, just like you, I'm 100% disabled, PTSD. I'm not some raging maniac. I can plug into any corporate America job right now and be just fine and be very effective. And I think that's what we need to do, is we need to take control of our own narrative as veterans and get out here and talk about who we are, and don't let TV, you know, dictate who we are, because it's not who we are.
Absolutely. 100%. Again, thank you so much. And I'll hit you up online. I'm going to get you one of these made, put in your office, or if you want to drink out of it, it's basically got my logo on it. I try to give one to every guest member that comes on. I'll hit you up offline, and man, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
Awesome, brother. It was really, really a great time. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, sir.